Okay, think we're there. So appreciate all of the patience in us getting there. I think yeah, Zoom's been a bit of a hindrance on getting us going. But Kev, thanks very much for the intro. Thank you all for taking some time out of your very chilly day to listen to a few points that we have to cover with you today. As Kev mentioned, we want to keep this as interactive as possible. So through the course of my presentation, there'll be some pop-ups with a few quizzes. Please send through your questions. At the end, we'll take all the time that we need to go through those together with you. I think in terms of just framing this is part of a bigger trend, and of course we want to understand social commerce. We're all very affair with e-commerce. Influencers and content creators are a very dynamic and interesting part of our life, and the marrying of those two things of e-commerce and creators is something that we want to unpack today. So just in terms of an introduction about me, so I'm a tech entrepreneur. I studied engineering. I worked in finance, and I love digital business. It's always been my aspiration to work at this nexus of commerce, digital, and content creator economy. And I'm a long-time believer in the fact that people are the real sales channel and influencer channel of the world that we live in today and will continue to do in the future. And it's an exciting part of my life. So it's really with a vantage point that I can share some information with you today, because from Webfluential's perspective, we run campaigns for brands that are sort of Fortune 500 brands, all the way down to the one-man brand person in China who wants to sell yoga pants to the West Coast of America. And we help them with a creator and an influencer in order to be able to do that. So we see what's working and what's not, and we're obviously immersed in this industry of digital commerce and understanding the way that it's moving. And there's so many vectors at play influencing it. So the information and insights that we're sharing with you today kind of comes from that collective experience that we have. But in terms of what I'd like to spend time on with you, by the end of it, I'd like you to leave this session feeling educated and inspired. And in doing that, what I'm going to do is to kind of cover a few steps, and I've got them over here almost as a little play by play, so that you've got some insight into how the story is going to unfold. So, first, it's obviously important for us to look back in history, just to have a look at where this trend has come from. A little bit of a comment about social commerce versus e-commerce, what the differences are, what are the mechanics and how do we understand those? Looking at a country case study. So which country do we look to as aspiration and inspiration for how this evolution is rolling out? What's happening in our local market? We're looking at influencers as a channel. We'll talk about authenticity and being real. For those of you that are already in the industry and running campaigns, this will be valuable to you. But for those that are interested and curious about getting started, we'll give you a few pointers on how we can get going. And from there, we'll take your questions. Great. So let's start. And let's just turn the clock a little bit, a little bit back and say, where does this commerce dimension start? And, consumerism really is the basis of it. The fact that we are all social seeking, status seeking animals. We all buy things, and those things are a lot of the reasons for those is the utility that we have out of them. But there's also a dimension of our own personal identity, our own aspiration to climb the social ladder and to illustrate to people around us that we associate to a certain narrative, that we are part of a certain movement, and we do that by the things that we buy and where we spend our time. The fast tracking of that has happened through these big phases of having the internet amplified by our connection to it every minute of the day by being able to have a mobile phone in our pocket. And then this community element. So social media was born because we had, readily accessible internet connections and mobile phones. And we now all are part of professional networks, social networks, private networks, and, a number of other ones. So that really pulled this ability to base consumerism, for our world into a much faster moving environment. Then we had this influence of brands, and there was a time where certain brands were only available in certain countries. If you wanted to go and get a certain brand that wasn't available in our country, sometimes you had to ask a friend or a family member to bring it back from that country for you, in their suitcase. But brands and their stories are now prolific everywhere. So you can pretty much buy any brand that you want from any country that you're in, and you can participate in a brand's conversation digitally any time of the day. So brands have become pervasive, and as social media, which was really built to connect people, brands have bought a seat at the table or earned a seat at the table in some cases, where they are part and parcel of the conversation that we have every day, just in our social feeds. Influencers are effectively those distribution channels and content creators. And I've put in brackets there, including AI. I mean, I think we've all become aware of, but we're going to see more prolifically the rise of artificial intelligence, not just as chatbots. So you will have known about ChatGPT, Scarlett Johansson's debacle, where almost that idea of Her, the movie, which is your assistant or your, evolving into your digital girlfriend. There's going to be influencers who have those really intelligent personalities, but also the visuals to go with them. So what is the content that they're producing, and how are they sharing that? So influencers, if you think about it, are a new social and communications channel, in the same way that we used to have mainstream media. So a lot of the mainstream media channels, whether it's Vox, whether it's Fox News, those communities which existed on a website were channels that you would go to find the news. But now, because we spend so much more of our time on social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, or X, we are seeing that news being brought to you by influencers. So they really kind of grease the wheels of being able to have access to the news, and then also to be able to have communication come through to us easily. And then lastly is I've got here headless and social commerce. And e-commerce is obviously what we know. We're excited about having Amazon .co.za in our country. We've long been users of Takealot, but social commerce or headless commerce is where we can buy things and not necessarily care about the infrastructure or the website that's in the background, that's checking the inventory, processing the credit card, doing all of the logistics and making sure that the parcel arrives at your house. It's just making it very convenient that from a social post, you can purchase something because it was shown to you either by paid media or given to you by a narrative that you follow of an influencer that you might enjoy. So, these are the forces, or if you want to think about them as the tailwinds that are shaping this industry. And I think the last one to mention is just is digital products. So a lot of the time, we spend on things that are physical, but increasingly we're going to be spending on digital products. So those are all of the things about digital services. So, whether those are online courses that we could be taking, they could be PDFs that we're downloading about a meal plan. And the friction that comes with digital products is way less than physical products. And why I say that digital products are going to be more prolific is one of the reasons that we're going to look at now is a bit of an uncomfortable truth. But they're becoming a lot more accessible. and there's a reason behind that, which is this. So, to sort of frame, those are the tailwinds, but what are our headwinds? What are the uncomfortable truths of this economy that we find ourselves in? And Fortune magazine recently had an article talking about the fact that 54% of Americans have added a side hustle to supplement their primary income. And the majority of these hustles were creator orientated. So that means that, in a household, in order to make ends meet, the jobs that we do are not helping us get there. So we've been in a high inflation environment. Things are a lot more expensive, or the purchasing power of our rand or our dollar is a lot less. And as a result, we need to look at other means of income. We also have, fantastic digital services on hand, whether they're design services, communication platforms. So it allows us to be creative and expressive and share content and products online, and then also be able to get people to buy them in a friction-free way. So this is something, and if it's not part of our households already, it's soon going to be the fact that that we need to think about supplementing our incomes with something that we do digitally as a hobby or a passion thing on the side. So that's one. There might be a few of you that listen to the All In podcast. Comes out every Friday. Chamath Palihapitiya was one of the early employees and shareholders of Facebook, and he was pretty prolific in scaling that platform from the first 10,000 users to its first billion. He made a lot of money doing so, and he really understands social dynamics and product incredibly well. And he runs a hedge fund called Social Capital, that invests into all sorts of businesses. And just this last Friday, he has an op-ed on his personal blog talking about the creator economy. It's a deep dive. Again, it's an example of a digital product. So he's got a third of that article available for free, but you can buy the PDF of it, for a number of dollars. But really, what he said a couple of weeks ago on the All In podcast are that content creators are the modern form of demand generation. And for whatever it is that you want to consume, they replace advertising and they displace traditional content generation. He shared a graph of the annual spend on television and on Facebook. And for the first time this year, brands will spend more on Facebook than they do on television. And, if we think about what our perception of budget split might be, we've always thought digital is a small portion, but radio, TV, outdoor is the larger portion. But that is changing incredibly quickly. And, in a world where we've got a lot of content because of AI and because of content creators, it's the content creators who really hold the controls of where that content is going. And because they are such valuable distribution channels, we're going to see an increasingly large amount of demand coming for them. And this is another one which is a bit of an interesting one and possibly a little bit uncomfortable, but the fact that we're at the dawn of a digital species, that, for all of the time that we spend physically, we used to spend a lot of time physically going to interact with other people. Now that the amount of time that we spend digitally interacting with people as the number of hours in the day or a week, say, if you had to tally up how many hours you would spend with friends out, in some social setting on a weekend or in the evenings during the week, and actually how many hours you spend communicating with them now over WhatsApp or social channels, it's a vast majority more. And so there's a dimension almost to say we have a digital persona, or we are physically present in the real world, but we also have a digital twin, if you want to call it that, where there's a digital representation of us on the internet. And that looks and feels, for the most time, very much like us. But they are, it's the way that we represent ourselves, our personal identity on the internet. But because of AI, and this is a product of Microsoft's, it's very easy to replicate that. So this particular product is a little bit scary, but I'll just run the video so that you can learn for yourself.
But you know what I decided to do? I decided to focus all my attention, all my time on listening. So instead of doing something else, I just listened, and listened. Because I'm a true believer that if you're really bad at something like listening, for example, it only shows you that, hey, you have to practice listening as much as you can.
We introduce Vasa, a framework for generating lifelike talking faces with appealing visual effective skills, given a single static image and a speech audio clip. Our model is capable of not only producing lip movements that are exquisitely synchronized with the audio, but also capturing a large spectrum of facial nuances and natural head motions that contribute to the perception of authenticity and liveliness. The core innovations include a holistic facial dynamics and head movement generation model that works in a face latent space, and the development of such an expressive and disentangled face latent space using videos.
So pretty scary, but with uploading one photo of yourself and a few seconds of speech, a digital twin of you can be created to say certain things. So that allows me to take anybody who's on the call today. If I've got a photo of you and a video clip because we had a phone conversation, I then can produce videos and share them on the internet of you saying things that you actually didn't say in the real world. Where this was used badly was a case about 2 weeks ago where there was a Zoom call between some financial controllers and what was effectively an AI version of the CFO of a company, where he instructed them to send $25 million to a particular account, which the controllers then did. And it was obviously a case of fraud. So, there's the good and the bad about it. But if we have to think about what's on the horizon here. Sorry, just closing that. So if we have to think about where this allows us to go, and I have to apologize, I'm on another computer here, just because of the challenges that we had with Zoom. But if we have those uncomfortable truths and we've got those tailwinds, what if we have to combine those things together? What do they help us see for the future of engagement, the future of retail, and where the creator economy is going in this particular market? So, when I mentioned a little bit earlier, let's look at another country as a case study. I don't know how many of you thought that we might be looking at China. I imagine a few might have supposed we would look at America, but China is a fascinating story in terms of how well it has mastered the future of shopping, where it has positioned influencers as more prominent and more prolific than ads. So in China, these influencers are called key opinion leaders, or KOLs, and they drive monster sales volumes. How they do this is typically on live streaming events, effectively a social channel dynamic where people participate together. They have a conversation, they're engaging with a host, they're learning about the product, and they can purchase from that live stream, so that they can go and have that order delivered. And how they're running that is because of the investments that have been made by the likes of Pinduoduo, and the social channels that exist there. It's obviously a little bit uncomfortable, of the plays that Alibaba and Tencent have with regards how much is on the go with tracking of your behavior, etc. But it is fascinating to see what is on the go. An example of that is Lee Jackie, who is known as the Lipstick King. He sold $1.7 billion worth of lipstick product during a 12-hour live stream, and 250 million people tuned in. I mean, if you just think about the technical demands on the fact that we can't get a Zoom call together to work well today for 60 people, imagine having the infrastructure to serve 250 million people on a live stream and allow for commerce to happen. So you can appreciate just how technically savvy China is in terms of these investments, but then also the articulate, engaging, and very social element of these calls and what they could do. So if we're looking for case studies, and each of you represent on the call today a particular brand or two, is to go and have a look at your brand's competitor or opposite number in China and how they are looking at social commerce and live streaming. And if we think that China's an island unto itself, we'd be wrong there. In South Africa, Temu is the most downloaded app of 2024 so far. Amazon set up shop. Takealot, I think, is taking some hits. But if we have to be honest, it's the real competitors are Temu and Shein. And why those are so competitive is because of the price that they can offer to someone, that you can have something delivered. And how they've managed to do that is they've gone and sourced and interacted directly with the suppliers in China. So all of the goods and services that you normally buy that have a really nice brand on top of it, there's a manufacturer who's producing those goods without the brand that you can go and buy from the Shein app or Temu app. Temu also has this incredible dynamic where it offers discount if you get a few of your friends to purchase the same item as well. So what they're actually doing is they're getting you to acquire customers for them for free, and then the incentive is some discount on that product. So you'll see on the graph on the right-hand side here that this massive jump in interest in Temu, over the last just this year. So Superbalist and other retailers really taking a lot of pain because of these new entrants. But China is really flexing its muscle in terms of its production capability and distribution that it's got to the rest of the world. And South Africa is not happening in isolation. You'll find that this is similar for almost every other country out there. So then if we do look a little bit locally, we've got to think about what's happening here. So in South Africa, TikTok was something that probably we started experimenting with maybe during COVID, but it hasn't been around a very long time. There's a lot of noise on the go in the States around how TikTok might be able to listen to someone's behavior, and there's privacy issues around that. But TikTok really is a fantastic channel. It's almost that version of yourself where you don't have to be curated and looking your best. It's a real life channel and lends into what's happening locally, and it's hugely entertaining. TikTok Shop is the commerce dimension for TikTok. So if you want to have a product that you can sell through TikTok, you do so by listing it on TikTok Shop. Facebook Marketplace is also a huge opportunity. If any of you have run a garage sale and listed things on Facebook Marketplace, you'll be amazed to see the distribution that it's got. And Facebook, not just in South Africa, but globally, has just over 2 billion users. So Zuckerberg's effectively sitting on this very quiet sleeping giant of a commerce mall that has a huge opportunity to kind of be made real. And then there are a number of brands that are doing a lot in this creator commerce space, but probably the good examples to have a look at from a live streaming and live shopping capability is Mr. Price and Woolworths, in terms of how they are dismantling that supply chain of content production into purchase. The ability to do a live stream and make things shoppable, where there's a deep link straight into an item that you can purchase is fantastic. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see all brands have a participant approach to this. And I mean, as much as there are good things happening in the local market, I think it also raises a few things about what's not happening in our market. And those are things, to say either they are opportunities that someone can take, or they are going to be infrastructure challenges that we need to think about overcoming before we can get to sort of the scale and retail income that we do from the likes of a China. Those examples of that many people tuning into a particular live stream and spending that much is just not going to happen in South Africa for a while. And the reasons for that is then, this first point. So that transition between spending on outdoor and digital, when everyone is spending, and all of us know this, we spend far more time looking at our phone and on social channels than we do spending time watching TV, listening to the radio, or seeing, in our car, looking at billboards. But as a percentage of your media spend, why are brands still spending more on traditional than they are on digital? I don't know. It almost all should be on digital, because that's where you can interact with the broadest section of the market, and then have them click to buy a lot easier than they can on a radio station or a television. The relationship, and we see this a lot, is, what is that fine line that brands walk on a relationship with their creators? Creators are often asked, well, if I gift you a product, will you talk about it and share this with your audience? Or what about if you talk about it and then we just give you a percentage of the sales? Creators are effectively being burdened with a lot of the risk and the friction that come together with what brand purchases currently offer. So, in the best way to solve for that is having some kind of an affiliate rails that brands can get influencers to sell product, almost as being that digital storefront for the brand. But then they should easily be able to participate as in a sales commission. I mean, when you walk into a lot of the shops in store, the shop assistant's going to write his particular number on the product, and he gets a commission at the checkout. It's exactly the same model with an influencer, and no one that I'm aware of is really investing well into that affiliate rail, so that they can empower creators. They don't have to pay them upfront, but then the creator knows that the work that they're doing on risk, they can get an income for. So for the moment, it's going to have to be co-creating with creators and paying them for their content production capability and their distribution capacity, together with the personal brand ethos and aspiration that they carry. It's also a bit of a tough question to ask a number of the brands, is why are you paying for all this retail space together with the inventory that sits on such an expensive property? If you think about a particular mall that's closest to you, the cost to fit out your store, to staff it and stock it with product, versus just having that in a warehouse and spending that same amount on a digital go-to-market. So, brands are, and sure, we are seeing that there are some gaps now and some empty stores in these shopping malls, but increasingly so. Why is this the case? And then, a little challenge to brands is why they're not exploring these digital marketplaces a little bit more proactively. And, there are brave brands doing that, but I think a lot more can happen. And this was a TikTok clip that I saw, which is it's a great reference, just in terms of, for those that are, how are brands thinking about it? So let me play this for you.
This is hands down one of the smartest business accounts on TikTok. So you've probably come across this creator called Strawberry Milk Mob, but what 99% of people don't know is this is literally a business. So let's break down this genius strategy. So Georgia Costello started on TikTok in 2022. And as you can see right at the start, she wasn't having a lot of success trying to sell her products. And that's where she made the most genius switch. Rather than making her account about her products, she flipped the business model and made lifestyle content that was entertaining and funny. And this is so smart because it built a community of women between 18 and 34, which is her primary demographic to buy her products. In just 1 month, she went from getting a few thousand views to literally millions. And flash forward to today, which is less than 1 year later, she creates roughly 50 lifestyle videos to one business related video. And this strategy has not only grown her account to 1.3 million million followers, but she's now generating millions in revenue. So if you're a business trying to sell your products in every single video, then you might want to reconsider.
Cool. So some food for thought on that.
This is hands down one of the smartest.
This is another kind of dimension into social commerce. There's this hashtag that you can go and find, making product ads until the company notices me. There are literally hundreds of thousands of content creators that are in love with the brands that they use every day, and they produce content and tag the brands in the hope that the brands engage with them, and then they do pay for them. So they do that entirely on risk, just out of passion. All the while, what they're actually doing is they're developing a bit of an inventory and a portfolio, so that they can showcase it. So maybe they don't land that particular brand, but they can work with a competitor or a related product. But it's a good way for you to keep an eye on what's being done for your competition. So you might want to spend some time on this hashtag with your brand's mention or your competitors. But I mean, you'll see from this example that I'm going to show you, the quality of production that we see from our creators is comparable to television advert, but for an absolute fraction of the cost. And it's largely to do with the editing and the software tools that are available to the creators these days, but also how innovative they are in terms of like taking a first principles approach to content production and not having this legacy of, you know, all of the rigging, all of the gear that would typically go into a television advert. So you can see in the background there, just you know, some really low cost pieces of support rigging to be able to produce a really high quality advert. Then, you know, an aspirational example is something, you know, that I think is you know, a good way to see that people aren't necessarily selling a product. People are selling a narrative. People are selling a story that other people that follow them want to be able to replicate in a version of that for themselves. So the people that you follow have this personal brand affinity, and that drives consumer intent. So being able to not just say, here's the product, but actually introduce it as part of that narrative. This is how I use it. This is how it transformed my life. So there's a storytelling element as part of that. And the fact that you didn't wake up one morning and think that you were going to buy a set of pots, pans, and crockery, but that you were enjoying the content that came to you through the people that you follow. And this was a way of discovery. So you weren't searching for it proactively, but you discovered it through the people that you follow. And you know, in doing so, it supersedes just being able to go to an e-commerce store and buying for the sake of utility. But also beyond the creative element, there is a trackable dimension. And on the bottom right of this, you'll see that there's a way that we can track the performance of content as it relates to telling a story and then what happens afterwards. This isn't for this particular campaign, but in this particular instance, there were, you know, 7.8 million impressions, 63,000 link clicks, generated 4 million rands worth of revenue. And the metric that we use to distill all of that is ROAS, return on ad spend. So ROAS you get by dividing the revenue that you got by the amount that you spent on that particular medium. So for every dollar that you spend or every rand that you spent on that content creation, you know that you're going to generate 75 rand or dollars in revenue. So, you know, that paints a really positive story, and you can continue to spend. So just as an example, have a look at this content done by Misha.
I've wanted a cream cast iron cookware set to complement our kitchen for ages, and I found this beautiful and inexpensive range through George and Mason at takealot.com. Ordering and delivery is so quick and easy with Takealot, and here I am giving these babies a whirl. I've got some friends coming for dinner, so I'm making Ottolenghi's aubergine meatball recipe, which a friend shared with me a little while ago. This is delicious, guys. I will share the details in my caption. It's so, so good. This cookware fared so well, and I just love that it matches the kitchen. I mean, I know I'm a total geek, but this all just looks so pretty together. If you're at a loose end for a gift this festive season, I think one of these pots or pans would make the most beautiful Christmas present, so that's an idea. Anyways, let me know what you think. Do give this recipe a try, and happy cooking!
So well-produced story there, not just selling the pots. Okay, so now that we've got a sense of how that might happen, this is to sort of think about influencers as a channel. So whether you call them creators, influencers, ambassadors, key opinion leaders, they effectively are all the personas of your digital storefront. They have spent a lot of time, money, and effort to amass the followings that they do, and the audiences that follow them trust them because they believe in the authentic stories that are told to them. So effectively, that's a social capital that they hold that brands can leverage. So they're creative, they offer distribution, they're cost effective, and I'll put a star there because they have to be used well, to that point of the TikTok video that we saw around, don't just produce content that you're hoping to move product, actually produce content that's illustrative of a story and a lifestyle. And they're real. So, it's important that you've got creators who are telling real, authentic stories. And again, that goes back to Kamat's view, where if you want to see the latest news, you're not necessarily going to go to CNN because that's got a political bias. You're not necessarily going to believe the reporter who's on there because they've been told what to do. Of course, they're reporting on the news, but there's always an influence. And if you can go directly to the source, to the actual influencer who happens to be there and can relay that news, the likelihood that you trust them is a lot higher than you would in that now looking to be defunct communication channel that exists through the traditional digital sales pipe. So important to keep influencers as a channel in mind. And if you do have a digital strategy or you don't, people are talking about your brand. It might not be on social media, it could be on dark social, or it could be in real life. But this is the point that holds influencers and brands accountable, is that authenticity cuts both ways. And to elaborate on that, if an influencer has a particular following and they talk about a particular brand or experience that is not on brand for them, their audience is going to hold them over the coals and call them out on them being inauthentic. They're going to lose trust and lose followers. And the next time that they position something, it kind of is not going to land as well as what they truthfully could do that if they'd kept that up. The same goes for brands. Brands can't just start up a brand page and claim to be the best or the highest quality or whatever it is that they think is their USP. The authenticity will come from the conversation from the people out there that are using your product. So it's a great way for you to get feedback about your product, but it's also a good way to extend on the narrative where you have found a niche and where you know that you are have a differentiated value proposition. So, if you want to take that in to start thinking about social commerce for your brand, this is almost a bit of a pointer, a 4-step plan. So the first thing is to just listen. Go and listen to what's happening on your online channels, across the various channels. Look for your brand and for your competitors as well as your industry. See what's happening, what are the trends, and how could you position there. A digital sales experience and affiliate model is something that you could think about. So if you have an e-commerce store, that's a great start. but think about an affiliate model, so that there is an easy way that you could open up social or headless commerce channels through your creator network, and that they can start selling for you. It's the same as hiring a new sales assistant to be working in your physical store. Here, they just have a massive following which listens to them every day. Number 3 is source a community of advocates that love you. So there's software that we run and can recommend that help you manage the community of people that are already believers in your product and can have a community that centers around that. And then lastly, you want to measure everything. And in being able to measure everything, you can find out what your most effective channels are. And channels could be for sales, which is the one that we're after. We all want to sell more of our product, but there are other things, other metrics, sentiment, share of voice, social lift. All of those sorts of things are important to be able to understand how the bigger picture is influencing the number of sales that you are able to make. So that would be a starting point. And what happens next? The content, community, commerce, the nexus of those is where it's an exciting place to play. So the question that we asked, are influencers the sales reps? I think that they're not just sales reps. I think that they are actually full suite digital commerce, single person agencies that are going to be able to individually move the needle for brands. We hear so many stories of the right execution of brands and creators where those creators have gone on to sell millions of rands worth of product. I mean, the number of cases where we work with brands and there's a selling out of that particular product in their store is becoming more frequent. So we totally see how this vector is really shaping a really exciting industry. And for us, we really want to help move the industry forward as that participant that sits between brands and creators. We want to make it a great and appealing opportunity for creators to market and monetize themselves. But in the same way, we want brands to be authentic and to see this high value channel as a great opportunity to be able to execute on. And then I'll just leave you, before we get into questions, Q&A, and go through the polls, with just a bit of an insight from someone looking forward. So if we do want to skate to where the puck is going to be, these are some of the insights that we saw, may see over the coming year.
This is what will be trending in e-com and brands a year from now. Specialized brands will continue to take market share from big established brands in key categories, much like how specialist running brands have disrupted traditional big shoe brands. This will continue across most consumable categories, especially in mid-tier price points. Niche excellence is coming for every category. The creator-to-brand pipeline will be hyper-saturated, especially in niches like fashion, CPG, and supplements are relatively easy to develop products in. It will also finally be savvy as how to truly leverage short-form video and creators. They'll be paying big dollars for long-term, mostly semi-exclusive partnerships with bigger creators. Think like a basketball team for brand influence. New creators that succeed will be leanly doing hard products that typically would have taken whole companies to execute. Localized internet businesses that focus on a hybrid of making content that can excel in a region and selling at local physical locations, whether that's retail, events, or having their own storefronts, will be the new winning wave, but less people will do it because it requires actual real relationships and harder work. Traditional retailers are going to build hybrid teams and acquire small companies to boost their in-house development efforts for white label and private label products. This is going to be much to the detriment of legacy consumer brands that sell a lot at retail because they're going to be squeezed between creator brands that the consumers actually want and these in-house brands the retailers are pushing. TikTok Shop will be running full tilt, and many bigger brands will be running whole teams to generate content, but the network will have reached its height in 2023 in the US overall. This is what will be trending in e-com and brand.
So, I think I've gone a little bit of the way to try and answer the question for today, but I'd love to leave it here and we open this up for discussion. So I'm going to navigate together with Kev, just back onto Zoom, and Kev, maybe what you could do is just help read through a few of the questions to me that you think are topical, and I can unpack them and look at helping to answer.
Great, thanks, Barry. Yep, we can certainly do that. We can go through. We got quite a few questions coming through, and if we don't answer your question during this session, people will definitely make an attempt to answer it online. So we'll send you those answers. But yeah, just to let's just see. I've got a question here from Debbie says, what is the typical, I suppose it's a bit of an open-ended question. What is the typical ROI on social commerce?
I think it's one of those metrics that gets better over time. So where you might have an initial investment into saying, what's our social strategy? How do we have our affiliate rails? How do we set up our social commerce? You know, that obviously costs a lot of time, strategy, and money to get going. Then it's who's the audience and the community that could be engaged to be able to talk about our product and ultimately sell it. And then how do we generate sales? I think where brands fall short is that they think it's a flash in the pan and they can spend once and then it's a you know it's an always on infinity machine that keeps the sales coming in the door. But for every subsequent creator that you engage that starts talking about it, and each new sale that comes in the door, you have to think about it almost like an investment where you're building the property to start, and then you're earning the rent for the years to come. Similar here, where your ROI is a target that you achieve over time as you've invested more into it and you've given it the time and you've applied your feedback on the learnings.
Okay, great. This is an interesting one, I suppose, partly answered through your actual presentation itself, Murray, but the question from Samantha, what would you describe as the core features of e-commerce?
So the core features of e-commerce, and maybe to parallel that with social commerce, e-commerce is where you know that you can go and buy a particular good or service, and the investment that e-commerce platform has to make in communicating with you all the time. You know, there's a reason why you've got a wish list and a shopping cart is you might not have purchased it at the time, but that's their way that they can engage with you. Oh, you forgot this in the cart, or this is on your wish list, it's now in stock, or it's on special. So there's a communication that has to come back to you. But it's a very utilitarian approach. It's walking down the shopping aisle and saying, oh, I needed that item, and putting it in your basket. It's just the digital equivalent of that. Where social commerce is far more about how do you get a particular product that helps you you enjoy a narrative. So, you know, there might be a following of people that wear particular things, say particular things, and you want to, you know, as part of your social peacocking, want to be part of that. And then you go and buy the goods and services that are, you know, the entry point to be able to look and feel as part of that. So it's far less utilitarian, it's more social, it's more fun. And it's a lot more engaging. So it's a variant of e-commerce, but how it's delivered to you is on your social channels and on your social feed.
Great. Question from Kevin. Kevin's in New Zealand. With all the hype around AI, do you think it will have any real impact on social commerce, or is it more likely only to aid influencers to deliver better content?
Sure, it's a good question. And I mean, so the generative AI, at least, so generative implying that it helps us generate content, that helps us complete the sentence, it helps us create the image without having to go find a great photo. It generates a lot more content for the internet than what has previously been there prior to AI. So we'll definitely see a lot more content, but there's only so many eyeballs that are able to follow those creators. So I think if you look at Mr. Beast, you get these super creators who are able to garner audiences of millions of people and generate millions of dollars in revenue. But to the point of this last TikTok that we saw is that brands or niche brands actually become the performers. I think what we'll see is that niche creators also become the better performers, where they might have a smaller audience, but they talk passionately about a very, very narrow part of what it is that they're interested in. And as a result, they can drive sales that relate to that particular niche.
And a few questions from Angelo, and Angelo will respond to some of these questions, personally as well, just in terms of you looking for case studies, etc. But the one question that Angelo asks here is, what role do influencers play in customer retention and loyalty in social commerce?
Absolutely. The advocacy, so the long-term benefit of your relationship with your brand, I think is an exciting part of this space where brands don't exist season to season, where brands exist from an experience perspective. So your advocacy, if you want to kind of take that into your referral network. So once you've been converted, so you followed an influencer and then you bought into that narrative and you bought the products. If you enjoyed them, the chances that you would recommend them to the people that aspire to be like you is high. And where brands can invest is to have those mechanics at play. So there's incentives to be able to easily say, I want to recommend my friend to do this and give them an incentive. So I can give them a 10% discount voucher and be reminded of doing that. So I wouldn't ordinarily, make it the purpose of my day to go and tell my friends and family about a particular brand that I'm enjoying. But if I was nudged to say, here's a voucher code, send it to someone that you think could benefit from it, that's a really good mechanic. So if you had that existing community of brand loyal advocates and you engage with them, you share them, you give them discount codes, you give them early release or early access to a new season or a new item of stock, and a way that they could invite like-minded people into that closed community. I think that's a very interesting dimension of how this plays out long term. So I'm excited to see that happen.
Right. Okay, Mary, I think we'll take one more question here. This was actually put on the chat group, but we'll convert it from Shirley. So when partnering with social influencers, is it best to offer them a commission on sale converted from a lead? Is that something they would be familiar with? Or do they want something that is more centered around engagement or their content or just leads generated?
Yes, it's the way it's delivered. At the end of the day, it is a lead. And a lead sounds very unsexy and almost like a commodity. Where if it's nicely delivered and wrapped, it reminds me of a great book where they talk about achieving the best restaurant in the world. The book's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And it wasn't the quality of the food that got them to be the best restaurant in the world. It was the way that they treated their customers, and it was the degree of hospitality. So caring about, from whether they wanted sparkling or still water, to if they asked where the particular burrata cheese came from, there was a card that helped them with that information, that they, at the end of the evening, had a personalized note and sometimes even a piece of art drawn of them on their special occasion. And it's the stories and the way that you make the customer feel that's your investment into them. And if you give them the mechanic and the tools to then be able to pass that hospitality on to someone, that's how you can get some really fantastic travel out of your brand and advocacy. So I'd hate for it to be kind of very utilitarian and unsexy and clunky as a lead. I'd love to be made more feel more like a most valued customer.
Right. Thanks, Murray. So just a couple of bit of housekeeping, guys. I mean, a few people have asked if the recording will be shared 100%. Yes, we will share it with everybody that was on the call. So thank you again for making your time, and apologies for those little Zoom issues in the up front there. But I think we got it all squared away. That's great. What we will do is we'll answer all the questions on the Q&A inside this chat, which is also available to you post. If anyone has any specific questions that they'd like answered, please also feel free to reach out. After you close your window, there will be a little survey with an email address on it, which you're welcome to reach out to. But certainly we will definitely deal with all these questions and get back to everyone. So Once again, Murray, thanks very much. Really insightful. Really appreciate your expertise and time on this subject today. And thank you to everyone who took the time out to join us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Oh, yes. And then
Thanks,
we will
Kev.
also announce who the Nando's winners are once we've gone through all the questions, and we'll send that those prizes off to you. So I'm holding thumbs for all of you. Thanks very much, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.